Hello everyone. Thank you for joining me on this Monday afternoon, early evening for my live floral painting demo. So I've been doing these demos every Monday where I'm working through just a little sample floral still life, and today will be pretty much kind of the same process I've done the other days. I'm going to complete this painting for the most part and just kind of talk my way through what I'm doing. So I'm starting this one with my underpainting already done. So I have my shadows mapped out and I put my complementary colors down already, and this is all dry. So now it's ready for the fun part where I dig in and start putting the actual colors of the flowers. And if you're here, feel free to just say hi in the comments so that I can see you, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, so I think it'll be fun just to jump right in with these pink roses. So I'm going to mix up a pink. Been using my number 3 brush. And I'm going to make my pink from cadmium red and white and a little bit of glaze. And cadmium red is a cooler red. It's kind of like a fire truck, like a really true red. So that's what I use quite a bit for pinks. When I want it to be a little bit more peach, I'll go with a pyrrole red. I usually use the pyrrole red when I'm doing skin tones because it's a warmer red. Hi, Bill. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I guess the underpainting, while I'm thinking about using the complementary colors, I'm also thinking about using colors that I like, that are going to look nice together, because the underpainting, bits and pieces of it are going to show through. So I like to see these minty colors contrasted by kind of this burnt orange and purple. So I am thinking about choosing colors that are going to look nice together, even in the underpainting process. Hi, Nina. Hi, Chantel. Thank you guys for stopping by and watching me paint today. I think I'm going to lighten this up just a pinch. Okay, I think I'm ready to get started. All right, so I'm looking for the highlights in these petals. So I'm gonna layer right over this green, but still leaving little areas of it showing. And my pink will look slightly less intense because I've got it thinned with some glaze. But as I build up some color, it's going to get more pink looking. Because right now, when it's got that green poking through, it kind of knocks it back a little bit. And in these early stages where you're just starting to put the color in, you really have to be careful to leave some regions where you can still see the green, because it's so easy to cover it all up right away and then you're stuck. Hi, Faye and Lee and Kim. Thank you everyone for joining me. I thought it would be nice to kind of set this up as an ongoing Facebook Live. So I sent out the invitation today for weekly Facebook Lives at 5. So if you got that, I think you should get a notification next time when it's happening. But I still have to double check how Facebook is working everything, because I feel like it changes all the time. But maybe next time you can let me know if you automatically got an invitation. Hi, Kim. Glad you made it. Hope everybody had a nice weekend. I'm really looking forward to Mondays where we get to do this together now. It's a good way to kick off the week. Plus, I have a lot of floral painting to get done because I sold off all my other pieces last week. if you didn't see, I ran a big auction on all of my little florals that I was working on last week to help raise some money for a local catering company here, some friends of mine that are providing meals for the tornado victims here. We had an awful tornado come through a week ago Sunday. And so my friends at Dish to Pass did, I think they're like at almost 3,000 meals that they've been doing, which is just amazing. And so that auction has allowed them to keep it going. So I think they're funded now through Thursday, and we'll see what happens after that. So I'm just pulling out these highlights. It's getting a little tight in here. Still got my big number 3 brush. It's a little bit tricky for me to get in, but I'm gonna try not to get too detailed. I don't need to do every single tiny petal that's in there. It's just not necessary. Hi, Steven. Thank you. All right, so I think that's about all of this color that I'm going to put in on this flower, because I'm going to bring out some brighter highlights next, so I don't want to get too carried away on this one. So I'm going to switch to up here and just start throwing some pinks in there. I mentioned this quite a bit, but I really bounce all over my panel, and that's kind of a personal thing. I know some artists will fully execute one part of the painting and then move on to the next, but I really like to jump all over the place because it helps me not to get too detailed in any one area, and it helps me to just kind of take an analysis of how I'm painting one thing based on how I'm painting the other objects. Because I feel like it all kind of flows together. And if I do a little here and a little there, it helps me to just get a better feel for where I'm going with the piece before I get too carried away. Again, it's getting a little bit tight in here, but I'm going to try to just add a few little dashes of this color and then move on. I think up in here, I'm going to darken it just a bit. I'm going to add a little bit more cadmium red to it. Yeah, that's cadmium, sorry. Had to think about it for a minute. Thank you, Paige. If you can't watch it all now, you can watch the rest of it as a replay. It will be available on my page, so you can just always check back. Everybody's doing Facebook Lives lately. It's just a good way to stay connected. Plus, I'm really missing having actual in-person classes. I was supposed to have a portraits class at my studio this week, and of course that had to be canceled. So I'm sad about that, but at least I can be connecting and teaching this way. All right, I think that's enough on that one. So I'm going to move up here. And since I've got my pink tinted a little darker with that extra cadmium that I added, I'm going to start with my darker areas on this one, and then I'll lighten it up a little bit. And since I already mapped out my shadows with my underpainting wash, that makes it really easy for me when I'm coming in with the actual color to know exactly where to put these tones, because I've already got my roadmap laid out for me. So that's the reason why I do these stages. Because obviously I like to let little bits of that underpainting show through, but I can work with really confident brush strokes when I've got it all mapped out. All right, so we've got the darker areas. Now I'm gonna go back and put a little more white back into my recipe. Maybe a little more glaze in there too. Welcome to anyone who's just joining us. Definitely feel free to ask me questions as I go. I'm checking the screen every so often to see if anybody else has jumped in with anything. That's the great part about watching me live, because you can talk with me as I work. Go a little bit later. Okay. Okay, I think that's all I want to do up here. Oh, I've got a little like fold of this petal right here that's coming down. We'll add that in. Get a little indication of some petals there, but not too much. All right, so now I'm going to add even a little more white to it, and I'm going to put this into some of the brighter areas on these petals. Thank you, Heather. All right, so those brightest highlights. So I've got the brightest highlight on this petal right here. That's what's catching the most light. So I'm going to start with that. I think I need to go even a bit brighter. Sometimes I don't really know until I actually put the paint right on the panel, because it could look one way on my palette, and then when I put it on the panel with all the other colors, it looks totally different. And sometimes I realize it's not dramatic enough, or maybe it's too dramatic, and then I just have to adjust it a little bit. Got a pretty bright highlight there. Yeah, Nina, I can share the reference image if you would like. Sure, why not? These are actually, this is a photo that I took, so I'm fine with sharing that. I got this little bouquet of flowers when I was driving home the other day from, I don't know, some essential errand. It was the bank or the grocery store or something. And I have a neighbor here in North Chattanooga who puts out little bouquets that she makes on the side of the road with a little lockbox for payment, and you can just buy her little bouquets. And so I thought this would be a great time to pick one up. So that is what I did. And then I thought, well, gee, I should photograph this and paint it so I can have it forever. So that's where this one came from. Oh, Nina, I'm glad you got the projector. Awesome. You're going to love it. I use a projector often when I'm doing a larger piece. For these small ones, I usually just transfer my outlines using some transfer paper because it's pretty quick and then it's accurate, but on a big piece, I always use a projector. All right, so I got a good amount of highlights on this, I think. Maybe a little, some of these highlights are so skinny, it I can't quite get in there with this brush, but I don't really want to switch down just yet. Maybe that's a sign that I shouldn't be including them. Okay, so highlights up here. This petal kind of twists. There I got kind of a big glob. The petal was not supposed to be that fat right there, but nobody's gonna know except for you guys. So I don't really need to worry about fixing that. All right, I'll put some brighter ones up here. This petal, or this flower, is not the focus of my piece. The focus is really this one. So this one I'm going to paint in pretty loosely. I do not want to put too many petals in very perfectly here because we really want the focus of the painting to be on this one. So just like in a photograph, you really do control your focus by how much you're putting in on the different flowers. Okay. Now I filtered this reference image. I use an app called PixArt, and there's always some fun filters which bring out some more interesting colors. So I like to do that with my reference image before I start. And it brought out these kind of interesting purple shadows. So I left some of my shaded areas open so that I can layer in those purpley shadows. Hey Karen, happy Monday. All right, so I'm using Permanent Violet Dark, which is one of my favorite colors from Golden, and a little bit of white. And then I'm also going to use Magenta from Golden, which is just a wonderful, luscious color, to make this pretty purple for my shadows. And this is going to tie in with the purple underpainting that I put in. Then I'm going to add some glaze to it because I want some of that green to poke through. I'm going to offload my brush so I don't have too much on there, and then I'm just going to go back with the tip and grab some. And now I'm going to layer some of this into my shadows. It might be a little too dark, but I'll just put it in the darker shadows first, and then I'll lighten it up a little bit. You can see this color really changes where you layer it over a bright area versus where you layer it over a dark area. So that's kind of the fun thing about working in glazes, because you can get different tones using the same color depending on what you're putting it on top of, which is kind of just fun and interesting. So sometimes I work with opaque paint and sometimes I thin it down into a glaze depending on what I'm going for. Usually when I'm doing highlights, it's more on the opaque side because you want those to kind of stand out. Hi, Dana. Yes, thank you for the optimism. I hope everybody is hanging in there too. I have my good days and my bad days. I was not cut out to be a homeschool teacher, and I am just coming to terms with that and not pushing myself just too hard anymore because it's just not going to happen. I can teach you guys from home, but not my children. All right, I think that's all of my purpley shadows that I want to put in right now. So now I'm going to just pop a few of these deeper red shadows in, and I am going to switch down to a smaller brush for that because I cannot get in there with my number 3. So for some of these little darker red shadows, I'm going to do some alizarin crimson and a little bit of cadmium red, and then a little bit of white too, I think. Sorry, you're losing me, Nina. I don't know if that could be on my end or if that would be on your end. I think my internet connection is okay here. Hopefully we're doing all right. All right, so this is kind of like a mauve burgundy that I'm going to put into some of my shadows. So let's see here. I can use this to trim some of my highlights down a little bit that maybe I got a little carried away with the shape of them. Put a few of those in. I'm going to hop up here and add a few of those shadows. And then I'm going to be done with these flowers for a little bit because I want to jump around and do some of my other flowers. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop in some color on my yellow flowers. I'm not a huge fan of that color of yellow, like just really true sunshine yellow. So I'm going to make mine a little bit more on the green side. Let me give that a try. Oh, Sherry, I'm so glad you signed up for the free classes. That's awesome. Yeah, and I hope that your supplies come quickly. Yeah, we were doing a month of free classes in the program at Zenzo Creative, and I have 3 classes in that program, in that bundle. That's a monthly program that students pay for to have access to. And we decided, in light of all of this awfulness and everyone being stuck at home, that we wanted to offer that for a month for free. So that promotion just came to an end, but everybody that signed up by April 15th, their month started from the day they signed up. So I think everybody was jumping in and ordering supplies right away so they could get it into it. And the paints that I use, Golden, I think you can order those on Amazon or on like Dick Blick or Jerry's Artorama, and I'm pretty sure those are all delivering pretty quickly. So shouldn't be too much of a problem. All right, I'm kind of making a dirtier yellow to start out with because I want to then come back and add some brighter highlights. And these have little tiny petals, and I am not going to do all those. I'm just going to look for like large masses of highlight. Oops. Hi, Randy. Thanks for joining me. All right. So, yeah. Start with a dirtier yellow, then we'll pull it out a little brighter. And I like how yellow looks on top of purple because those are really nice opposites. Try not to cover up all the dark shadows because I've got some areas where you see some of those dark leaves poking through, so I want to leave the leaves. This is kind of more of like a mustard yellow, which I like better anyways. I'm not into that bright sun yellow. I like the sun, just not as much as the color. We have a bright sunny day here, which is wonderful because I can make my kids go outside. Sometimes I can make them do that. So thankful that all of this is at least happening when it's springtime and we can be outside a little bit. At least we can. I know not everybody can. But here it's keeping us sane. All right, so we've got some yellow base built up there. Got another little bit of yellow flower over here that I really didn't outline, but I'm just going to give some indication of it. When I do my outlines, I don't outline every single thing because it would just get too much. So I am kind of selective about how much I actually include. All right, now I'll go in with some brighter yellow and pull out some highlights. So that new yellow is going to be Hansa yellow, tiny speck of phthalo green. Phthalo green's super strong. I talk about that all the time. It's just way too strong. Some white. It's already made my yellow way too green, so I'm going to have to knock that back. I'll knock it back with a little bit of pyrrole red in there. More yellow and more white. I might have to pick a new spot because I feel like this is still too green. Let's just plop it in there and see how it looks. I'm not sure. Can you guys see my palette? I think you can. Okay, good. All right. So this isn't going to go on the whole massive yellow flowers because some of them are in shadow. So it's just going to go in the brightest areas. I'm kind of thinking about the shapes of these little flowers, but I'm not painting them in perfectly. Sometimes if you paint like one or two flowers pretty fully, like where you paint all the petals to it, that gives enough information to the viewer to get a pretty good idea of what the shape of the flower is. And then for the rest of them, you just kind of highlight a few petals here and there. All right, we're going to come back to those, but I think that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay. Before I go into any other flowers, I'm going to put some background color in because I've got this like muted orange in the background and that's not going to be the color of my background. I'm going to use more like grays and blues in the background. So I'm going to start putting those in right away too, just so I'm not quite so distracted by that color. So I'm going to use some white and some Payne's gray. Got a little too dark there. More white. Don't forget, guys, if you're watching, please jump in and ask me any questions you might have. Maybe I'll put a little bit of the phthalo green in there. I like a little bit more of a tealy gray blue. I think it pops against the bright colors of the flowers. Okay, so I'm just going to do some big, fat, loose brush strokes, covering up some of that background color. And I've decided to make my background color the lightest up here, which it kind of looks like in the photo. I took this on my white countertop with my white backsplash, so it's pretty much all just white. But I do like to try to pick one area I'm going to push darker, and then another area that I'm going to let be lighter. And so some of that is just made up by me, but that's what I do. Yeah, Nina, the opposite colors would be the complementary colors. So that's basically what I do. I'm not like tried and true about it. I mean, sometimes I break my own rules, but I'm generally putting a cool color underneath a warm color and warm colors underneath cool colors. A little bit. And already once you start mapping in your background color, the painting just kind of starts to take shape a little bit more. Okay, so now this area is going to be lighter. So I'm going to lighten up my recipe. I'm just going to pick a new little window here. Add some white to my mixture. You notice I'm holding my brush pretty far back. That's something I talk about a lot with students, that if you want to stay loose and you want your brushwork to look loose, you have to hold your brush further back. It's just a really helpful practice, and it's something that probably doesn't come natural, so you really have to think about it. But once you do it enough, then it just starts to be a normal thing. If you're just joining me, thanks for dropping in. Feel free to say hi in the comments. I can see you. So now I'm kind of painting in the windows of the background that are showing up in between these little stems. But I'm leaving kind of almost like a halo effect around a lot of the stems in the background with that complementary color underpainting. All right, so that kind of changed the whole look, getting some of that blue in the background. And now I think I'll go ahead and put some color in this little purple flower that I've got going here. Thank you, Sherry. I'm just reading your comments here. I appreciate that you like having the explanation. I'll just keep doing it. All right, so this purple is a cool purple. So I'm going to use my permanent dark violet that I used before, but to make it cooler, I need a new spot right here. I'm going to add a little bit of phthalo blue to it. And then some white. And phthalo blue is a super, super strong color, just like phthalo green is. All right, so that makes a nice color. I'm gonna drop a little glaze in there. I need to grab some more. All right, so this is a pretty dark color. I'm just gonna put a little bit of this in because this is gonna be pretty dark, and then I'm going to go in and brighten it up for some highlights. This is gonna look really nice against that rusty undertone that I put in. Hi Carla, welcome. Thanks for dropping in. Well, now that I put this in, I realize I've got some highlights of my pink flower here that I didn't quite catch. I'll have to drop that in afterwards. That's another reason why I jump all over the canvas, because sometimes once I get a part of one flower put in, I realize that something else is missing in another flower. So it just helps me to see my image better. Like everything's just kind of woven together and one thing plays off of another thing. Bridget, thank you. Yeah, I'm a big fan of color, so I'm glad you like my color choices. And yes, I would love to have you come down to Chattanooga, Tennessee for a workshop. Kind of have all of that on hold right now, but when it's all over, those will be back up and running. So I would love that. And I'm just happy right now that I can be offering the online classes and still be teaching and still be working with you. And doing these Facebook Lives has been fun too. Okay, so now I'm going to lighten this purple up a little bit more. And as I lighten it, I think I'm going to add a little bit more phthalo blue, because I just kind of like it more blue than what I actually see here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to make my highlights more blue. And I might need to go a bit lighter, but let's just see how this looks. No, actually, that's pretty good. I don't want it to be too dramatic. Oh, you're in Nashville. Oh, perfect. Yeah, you should definitely come down to Chattanooga. All right, there aren't a lot of highlights on this flower, and I might just add more than what I see just to give it a little bit more shape so it doesn't look like kind of this dark blob, because it's a little bit looking that way, and I don't really want it to. So going maybe a little bit heavy on the highlights, but I get to do that. And now my highlights, there's like this other stem that's coming over this way, and these aren't quite as blue. It's a little bit more purple. So I'm going to go back to my permanent dark violet and mix up a new purple highlight that's not going to be quite so blue. I'll just pop a few little highlights in there. They're not very dramatic. And I've got the same thing in this little bit of a purple flower up here. This one's definitely more of a warm purple versus the blue purple. So I'm going to use this mixture for those highlights as well. And this is in shadow, so not crucial that we get this just perfect, because it's not our focus. Just want to drop a little bit in there. Okay. So now I think it's time to definitely get some greens in here, because now we've just got like all these warm flower colors and the purple, and we need to play off of that with some green. So I'm going to start with my darker greens, so like the very darkest greens, areas that almost look black. I'm going to drop those greens in first. And I'm going to make a green using phthalo green, and I'm going to knock it back with some alizarin crimson. And when you put those two colors together, it basically makes black, because they're both super strong colors. So I'm going to just first look for the areas that look pretty much completely black in my picture, and I'm just going to drop those dark shadows in. And then I'm going to lighten my green up into more of a green tone. But I'm still leaving some of my dark purple that I put down in those shadows. But you can see where once I drop these really dark areas in, all of a sudden it makes the flowers look even brighter. It's just a really interesting effect that it has. And I think that is why a lot of people say, you know, my colors are so vivid and the flowers are so vivid. It's because I've got those really dramatic contrasts of light and dark. It makes just the bright areas pop when they're contrasted by a few really dark areas. And I think that's all I need for the very darkest darks. So now I'm going to lighten this up. I'm going to add a little bit of white to it. And I'm going to warm it with some yellow. And I always soften my greens with some red. The only time that I don't is if it's like an intense lime green highlight. Then I might not add any red to it. But otherwise, I'm always knocking it back with a little bit of red, because red and green are opposites. All right, this highlight might be too bright, but I'm just gonna start dropping this in and see how it looks. Just got some of these little stem pieces that are popping out, and I'm thinking about leaving that purple there. Also thinking about covering my transfer lines. I've got these kind of pencil transfer lines that you probably can't see as I'm working, but I can see them. And if you were seeing this painting in person, you'd see them. So I'm thinking about covering those up as I layer my tones. Putting a little of this color into my vase. I'm just doing kind of like short little bursts of these greens. I'm not doing any like long continuous sections, because the tones of these pieces kind of change from light to dark. So you usually don't have like one drawn out piece that would be all the same color. Some areas of it are going to be catching a highlight and some are going to be in shadow. I like kind of all these little skinny bits of leaves. They're just really kind of interesting. Kind of fun to play with the shapes of them. If you're going to do your own floral paintings, I do suggest kind of curating them yourself, by getting a bouquet of flowers and laying it out the way you want it to be. My best piece of advice for that is less is more. So if you've got a bouquet that's got, 20 stems in it, it's going to be too much to paint. So, this one's pretty simple. It's got, 3 little roses and whatever these are and some greenery, and that's it. So I think try to keep it simple if you're going to. Because I've got some that are pretty light here that are picking up quite a bit of light. I'm going to add some more white to it. And I'm going to warm it up a little bit with some more yellow, just because I like more of a yellowy green. It's not quite how I'm seeing them, but I'm just going to adjust the color for what I like. these are all pretty dark down here, and really there's not a lot of highlights up here. I'm gonna push some of them a little brighter just to get some more interest going, but we don't have a lot of light and dark definition on a lot of these. All right, maybe I'll hold off on doing any of those brighter. I am going to push this one down here that's catching the most light. I'm going to push that a little bit lighter, adding some more white to it. There. Same thing up here. Okay. Haven't really done anything in the vase yet, so I think I should jump in there. So the vase is kind of like a muted, cool gray, blue sort of tone. Going to use some Payne's Gray, and some white is already on my palette there. A little bit of the phthalo green, and drop some of these darker tones in first, and then I'll pull out some highlights. So my darkest areas are the flowers on this side. Still have to be catching myself not to cover up all that pretty purple. Maybe that's it. So now I'm gonna let it get a little bit lighter. Go into my lighter side here that's got some white in it. Kind of got the rim of the little mason jar that they're in. I need to make that rim a little bit brighter, but it's wet right now, so I'm just gonna wait a second. And you can see the edge of this mason jar is kind of blurry because it's out of focus. So I can't paint my edge of my painting super crisp because that wouldn't make sense. So I want to think about letting my edge also be out of focus. So I'll come back and add that highlight on the rim later. I think I need a few more mid-tone greens. I've got kind of this grayed out green, and then I've got the really dark green, but I think I need something in between there. So I'm going to make that using some yellow, some phthalo green, and some cadmium red. More yellow. Thanks everybody who's just jumping in to watch. Feel free to say hi and ask me any questions you might have about floral painting or anything else. I'm here. All right, so we'll put some of these little dabs of mid-tone green in here too. This green's also not really my favorite, so I'm just going to use it sparingly, but I feel like I need it. Oh, I got a little something on my brush there. That's not the color I was using. Okay, sometimes that happens. All right, enough of that green. Okay, now I think I should go in and start just emphasizing some of the colors in my roses, because I think they could definitely jump out a little bit more at this point. Hi, Holly. Sherry's asking, do I always use fluid acrylics? I do. Golden also has the heavy-bodied acrylics. And it's just not my style. I like to work in pretty thin layers, so I don't really ever build the paint up very thick. But that's just up to you. I know some people really like them, so it's whatever you get used to. But yeah, I really like the fluid acrylics. So now I'm gonna pump up this highlight because this is really my very strongest highlight, and I wanna just push that even more. And I need some clean white because my white's kind of contaminated, so I wanna make sure it's totally clean. And I'm gonna put a little bit of cadmium red in there and just a lot more white. I like titanium white because it's a very strong white. You get a lot of bang for your buck with titanium white. It really lightens the color quickly when you add a little bit to it. Okay, so we're gonna push this highlight even brighter. All right, and then same up here. We've got this pretty strong highlight. When I layer these opaque highlights on top of the other colors, they look stronger because we've built up some of these pinks already. So it's going to make it look more dramatic than when we first layered it just over the green. I've got a weird dark shadow there that I need to cover up. I'm gonna put a little bit more red into it, mix it a little darker, and go over that. There we go. That's better. That was like throwing me off. Back to my highlights. Okay, I have to drop down to a tiny brush. I just can't get in there and do these highlights with the big one. Oh, Becky, you did the banana painting? Awesome. Yes, blending is always a struggle. But you know, those little fruit still lifes really are good practice for that because I paint those super loose. And if anybody is watching that doesn't know, those are in the Zenzo membership program that we were offering a month for free. And if you didn't get that month for free, you can still get the membership, and it's only $29 a month, and you get like, I don't know, 15 or 16 classes, I think. It's unbelievable. And I have 3 classes in the bundle, but the rest are from some other really amazing instructors as well. So it's a cool way to sample different classes and try different things out. But yeah, I designed those still life classes just to really help people get used to doing the looser brush strokes and doing it on a small scale so it's not so intimidating, I think is helpful. All right, cleaning up some of these petals a little bit. They were a little too rough and tough. I couldn't tell what was what. And it's still not exactly the same as my petals here, but I'm just trying to get like the general direction of the different petals. So it doesn't have to be identical, but I'm looking to keep my bright highlights in about the same places and my dark shadows in about the same places. And that's really what's the most important. Add a little bit of glaze, thin this out a little bit, make it a pinch darker. And just kind of clean up a few of these petals too. Had a little too much of that kind of gray tone showing. I want to make them a little more vivid. You can see they're starting to come alive when you've got some areas that are more saturated and then some areas that are more muted. It's kind of that push and pull. All right, I'm going to do the same thing up here, just kind of clean this up a little bit. I don't want to clean this one up quite as much as this one because, again, my focus is over here. So that's where we want the flower to be painted in the most clean. Let the rest of it be looser. There's where I noticed I had a little extra highlight that was missing in there. Kind of show that's the flower poking in between the purple flowers. All right, so those are starting to come alive a little bit more. Oh, we're getting close to 6 o'clock. I'm trying to wrap these up at 6. Okay, I'm gonna add some brighter highlights on my little yellowy green flower here. I'm gonna make these even more white and maybe more on the yellow side, so not as much of the green. So I'm gonna try to do this with just white and yellow. And I'm using Hansa Yellow, which is a really nice opaque, Hansa Yellow opaque, I should say. But it, like the titanium white, it packs a lot of punch. So let's look for those brightest areas. Yeah, that's standing out now. Oh, hi Sherry, thanks for joining me. You can always jump back and watch this from the beginning in the replay if you want to see how I did it. How we got to this point anyways. Okay, so those are standing out a little bit more. I'm going to do a little jab over here. But over here too, just to make that fun over there. I'm gonna do a little here too. There we go. I just kind of like to jump that around. Okay, now I said I was gonna come back and do my little rim right there, lighten that up a little bit. Let's just do a little bit there. Some reflection in the vase. Then I want to just add some little bits of sparkly blue kind of jumping around the edges of the forms. And I'm going to do that with white and phthalo blue and maybe a little phthalo green. I'm not sure. I might just do phthalo blue. But that's like my secret weapon at the end. When I add my little bits of blue sparkle, it just like jumps. So there you go. You have it. Thanks, Sherry. Okay, so let's see how just the blue looks for a sparkly highlight. Add just a pinch of the green to it. Okay, I'm gonna try putting some little bits of that in. I kind of just like think about the direction of the stems and kind of like mirror that as far as these little brush strokes that are kind of intentional looking. They're just bopping around, throwing them in there quick, but it's going to make the other colors jump out. So when all else fails in a painting, add some little dabs of phthalo blue and white, and it will all of a sudden be amazing. You're done. You know everything you need to know now. It's my secret weapon. Now I don't want them all to be exactly the same value, so in some places I'm going to lighten it up a little bit more. Especially in the areas of background that are lighter, I'm going to make my little sparkles be lighter. Oh, I got a chunk of paint in there. Okay. Still there. There we go. So I just like to let the foreground play with the background. You know, it feels like it's integrated into the background when you've got all this like texture, movement coming through in the background, playing with the foreground. It makes those loose brush strokes that I'm using in the flowers, they make more sense when you see that in the background as well. If the background was like totally smooth, then those loose brush strokes on the flowers would seem weird. But when you do something in one place, it looks weird. When you do it in a few places, it's like, oh yeah, that was supposed to happen. I even like to let this little sparkle jump around onto my flowers. It's like, why not? All the different colors that we see, it's all just like light reflecting off of each other. So why wouldn't there be some of it jumping over onto the flowers? I like these light ones up here. I'm going to do some more of those. And then I'm going to wrap it up. I'll probably work on this one a little bit more on my own, and then I'll post it. And per Nina's request, I will share the reference image with y'all. And if you would like to make your own, following along with this video, that would be amazing. I would love to see it. I don't know if you guys saw my 10-year-old son the other day wanted to do his own floral piece, and he did the same one that I taught in a Facebook Live a few weeks ago. And he like watched the live and followed along, and he did awesome. It was so cute. So if you think maybe you can't do it, just remember, my 10-year-old son could do it. You can do it. And there is no creative juices inherited there, so he just put his mind to it. All right, I'm going to call this done. Thank you, everyone. And I'll see you next time, next Monday at 5 o'clock. All right, everybody take care. Have a great night.